Have you ever felt like no matter how much reassurance you give, it's never quite enough? You compliment her, you affirm her, you show up consistently, and for a moment, it seems to calm things down. But the need returns, stronger, more urgent, almost cyclical. She asks subtle questions that test where she stands. She compares herself to others. She watches your reactions closely, as if your attention is oxygen. If you pull back slightly, even unintentionally, the mood shifts. Distance becomes tension. Silence becomes a problem to solve. At first, it can feel flattering, being wanted, being needed. But over time, you may notice something else. Your role slowly shifts from partner to regulator. You're no longer just sharing a connection, you're managing her sense of worth. Most men hesitate to question this dynamic because they don't want to seem cold or insensitive. Supporting someone you care about feels natural, but there's a difference between healthy reassurance and an endless emotional debt you're expected to pay. In this video, we're going to examine what constant validation seeking really signals, and why ignoring it can quietly reshape your life in ways you don't see coming. When entering a relationship, we are often enchanted by the feeling of being needed. When she asks, "How do I look in this outfit?" or "Do you still love me like you did on the first day?" you feel valuable. But at Femina Mind, we encourage you to look beyond those questions to see a pattern that is gradually forming. The difference between a woman who loves you and a woman who depends on validation lies in the frequency and her reaction when she does not get what she wants. Let us break down the first two signs. Sign 1. She needs reassurance after every minor trigger. Imagine this. You have an extremely busy workday. You do not send a lunchtime text, or you respond about 2 hours slower than usual. A stable woman will understand that you are busy. But for someone dependent on validation, that silence is a trigger. She starts to worry, doubt, or worse, she gets sulky. She needs you to explain, to soothe her, and to confirm dozens of times that everything is still fine and you are just busy. The psychology behind this is an expression of low internal stability. She does not feel secure within herself, so she uses you as an emotional anchor. When the anchor shakes even a little bit, her world wobbles. The mistake men make is rushing to explain. You apologize for simply going to work. You increase the dose of reassurance to trade for immediate peace. But you do not realize that by doing so, you are teaching her that as long as she is anxious, you will provide more attention. The Femina Mind approach is to keep your own pace. If you are busy, be busy. Then respond in a calm, brief manner without a sense of guilt. Do not increase the dose of reassurance. Let her face that silence on her own. That is not being cold. That is how you keep the relationship from turning into a 24/7 emergency room shift. Sign 2. Her mood depends entirely on your attention. Have you ever felt like a lighting technician on a stage? When you shine the light on her through praise or pampering, she is radiant and sweet. But as soon as you turn off the light to focus on your personal hobbies, your career, or your friends, she immediately becomes gloomy, cold, or irritable for no reason. The pattern here is that validation has become the main nutrient to regulate her emotions. She is unable to create her own joy without the reflection from your eyes. The right action is to not try to maintain an artificially high level of attention just to avoid a fight. An attractive man is someone who has his own kingdom to rule. Do not let your life schedule and mood be swept away by her emotional sine wave. When you maintain your solidity and remain unshaken by those moody mood swings, she will be forced to learn how to stabilize herself, or this pattern will reveal its true nature as excessive demanding. Do these patterns look familiar to you? Have you ever felt exhausted after a long day just because you had to stay on call to keep someone's mood from falling off a cliff? If the answer is yes, leave a comment sharing that experience. We are not judging her. We are observing the energy system between two people. Femina Mind reminds you that a healthy relationship is like two independent entities walking the same path, not one person having to constantly provide blood so the other can keep walking. At this point, you might not feel alarmed, just slightly drained. Not because she's done something openly destructive, but because the emotional atmosphere feels heavier than it should. You care, you reassure, you show up, and yet it never quite seems to be enough. That's what makes this dynamic so confusing. On the surface, needing reassurance doesn't look dangerous. It can even look vulnerable, human, understandable. Taken in isolation, each request for affirmation feels small, easy to give, easy to excuse. So you tell yourself it's normal, that everyone needs support sometimes. But the issue isn't a single moment of insecurity. It's the pattern of emotional gravity, like a battery that drains a little faster each day, not from one large demand, but from constant background pull. Or like carrying a weight you barely notice at first, until you realize you've been adjusting your posture the entire time. What matters isn't whether she needs validation. It's whether you've become the sole source of it. When one person must repeatedly stabilize the other's sense of worth, monitor reactions, soften truths, increase praise just to keep equilibrium, that ongoing imbalance becomes information. From here, the dynamic doesn't explode, it tightens. Because the next patterns won't feel dramatic. They'll feel like responsibility quietly replacing reciprocity. If this dynamic feels familiar in ways you haven't fully named, stay with me. Sign 3. She tests you when you show signs of pulling back. When you start to prioritize your work or simply want a quiet evening to yourself, you will notice a strange reaction. Instead of respecting that space, she suddenly takes actions to grab strong attention. She might post a provocative photo on social media, talk about a male coworker who just complimented her, or suddenly act extremely busy and unapproachable. Psychological analysis shows that this is not an accident. It is a test. When the supply of validation from you decreases, she needs to check if this source is still functioning. She creates insecurity for you to force you to jump in, compete, explain, or reconfirm your position. The mistake men make is falling into the trap. You start getting jealous, asking questions, or trying to make up for it because you are afraid of losing her. You jump into a race where she is the one setting the rules. Acting according to Femina Mind means being a sober observer. Do not participate in this testing game. If she intentionally tries to get attention, just let her do it. Your silence and calmness are the most powerful answers. It shows that your value does not depend on racing against external influences. Sign 4. The lack of reciprocity. This is when exhaustion starts to soak into your bones. You realize you are like a free charging station. You praise her, encourage her when she is sad, and affirm her beauty every day. But when you face pressure, when you need a word of recognition or a mental support point, you only receive indifference or even irritation because you ruined the happy atmosphere. The metaphor here is that the relationship is like a broken compass. The needle always points toward her. You are nourishing the self-esteem of someone else through the consumption of your own self. The bitter truth is that we often believe if we give enough, we will receive in return. But in a validation-dependent dynamic, the receiver often views your giving as a default obligation. Sign 5. Every conflict turns back to her emotions, not a solution. In a healthy relationship, when there is a problem, we find a solution. But here, no matter what the original issue was, the conversation will always be steered toward how you made her feel hurt. The dangerous pattern is that she uses emotions as a shield to avoid taking responsibility. Instead of resolving the conflict, you have to turn around and confirm that she is still good, still loved, and that you are the one at fault for making her sad. The psychological fracture is that the most dangerous thing is not her behavior, but the fact that you start to rationalize it. You tell yourself that maybe she is just too sensitive. But in reality, you are gradually turning into a full-time emotional lifeguard. If you see yourself in these examples, take a deep breath. You are not alone. Many men have stood in your position, trying to fix something they did not break. If you feel these analyses are hitting your longtime blind spots, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Because in the next part, we will talk about the final sign, the most dangerous sign, where you truly face the risk of losing yourself. We have gone through signs ranging from subtle to obvious, but this final sign is truly the point of no return. It does not lie in her actions, but in the shift within your own mindset. Sign 6. You start taking responsibility for her self-worth. This is the most subtle psychological trap. You begin to believe that if you stop praising her, stop soothing her, or stop giving her 100% of your attention, she will collapse. You turn yourself into a life support system for someone else's self-esteem. Flip your perception. You think you are saving the relationship by trying just a little harder, but in reality, you are nurturing emotional parasitism. A person who lacks the ability for internal validation will never have enough stability to build a healthy love. The moment of realization. When you feel that being with someone is like working a high-pressure, unpaid part-time job, that is when you have lost your freedom. You no longer love her for who she is, but rather you stay because you fear the feeling of guilt if you leave her alone. At Femina Mind, we do not teach you how to punish or change her. We teach you how to take back control of your own life. A high-value man understands that his attention is a gift, not a debt. If she needs validation like an emotional drug, and you are the only provider, then this relationship is not a bond between two souls. It is a dependency between a patient and a first responder. You were not born to perform that duty. Remember that kindness without boundaries is just weakness. When you dare to set limits, when you dare to say no to unreasonable emotional demands, you are not only protecting yourself, but also giving her a chance to grow up. If she leaves because you no longer provide enough validation, then in truth, she never loved you. She only loved the way you made her feel less empty. Femina Mind is a mindset that helps you keep a cool head in a world full of complex emotional shifts. We do not promote bitterness or hatred toward women. On the contrary, we respect genuine connections where both people are able to stand firm on their own 2 feet before holding hands. We will end today's talk with a question for you to ask yourself. Are you building a relationship to grow together? Or are you using all your energy to keep another person from falling apart? If you find this content helpful for your journey to find your solidity again, hit like and subscribe to Femina Mind. Leave a comment about your experience. We are always here to walk with you and decode the most complex patterns of psychology. Thank you for spending time on yourself. Goodbye, and I will see you in the next video.